The Chabura wouldn't have been able to be a thing without the guidance and the care of Rabbi Joseph Dweck, who is here, who's the senior rabbi of the Spanish and Portuguese community, Kehillah, of the United Kingdom. And we are truly grateful that he's come to this and supported it and gave us great advice to sort of make this happen. And it's really it's a kavod for me as a student, as I see Rabbi Dweck as a mentor of mine, to introduce him, to share some words of Torah, some chizuk, so that we can then go into this wonderful evening of music and celebrate this very diverse but rich Sephardic heritage and some glorious tradition. So without further ado, I want to introduce Rabbi Dweck to the stage.
After that. I appreciate very much that Ethan and Avi have said the thanks that are required and that we are very grateful to make to all that have made this conference and this event possible. I do want to say again my deep gratitude to Avi and Ethan, because it is to have a conference like this has been a vision for a long time. For me, for them, for many of us. And if it were not for them, it would remain a vision for a long time. They are the Bitzalels of the Mishkan. They are the ones who take the vision and make it happen. So I really, I mean, the zechut should stand for you both and for everyone here. And it really is a tremendous zechut that you both have, that you brought everyone here and that you brought the Hachamim together, and really HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be M'barech Etchem and be Malbeh Etchem Ad B'Nidayim. I also want to say how deeply grateful I am that the Hachamim are here. It's not a small thing. The very fact that people have gone on planes and made it their business to be here shows that they recognize that there's something valuable and that there's a reason to be here. And I think, as Avi and Ethan said, and I agree, if it were not just to be able to come together, Shevet Ahim Yom Yahad, Dai, it would be enough. Because I know in my short career, one thing that many of my colleagues have said to me and that I've echoed back over and over again, and I don't want to keep this in any way negative, but I think it's important to be able to just mention these things. There is an element of loneliness. Not just in being a rabbi, there's that too. There's an element of loneliness. I remember having a conversation with Rabbi Sachs Alav Shalom about this very thing personally. There is an element of loneliness, but I think for us specifically, and when I say us, I'm not going to keep explaining. I mean the Sephardi Hachamim that are here. There's something unique about the loneliness because we are a minority and a minority and a minority. What I mean by that is the Jews are a minority, and amongst the Jews, the Sephardim are a minority in the broadest global sense. And amongst the Sephardim, this particular kind of Sephardi is a minority. Don't get me started about the Spanish Portuguese. So there's a bit of a loneliness, and when we come together, it's chizuk. And I think that we should take a moment just to feel the chizuk of our friends being together, of haverim genuinely, haverim being together, as the Gemara says haverim, right? We're haverim. And what can I say? Avi asked me to say a few words tonight, and the truth of the matter is, like I say, I'm a bit nervous because I'm speaking to people who know everything that I'm going to say already. And what I say is self-evident. So what can I possibly say that everyone doesn't already know or think? But I take my cue from the Ramchal Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, also could be considered to be a Western, maybe Sephardi, I don't know, Talki, debatable. But whatever the case is, he has a famous line, also that everybody knows, from the Miskari Sharim, in where he says, I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. And yet he does. And I say very often, I believe in preaching to the choir, mainly because I actually have a choir in my synagogue. I believe in preaching to the choir because I believe that it is important sometimes to give strength to the choir who's singing, that they should continue to sing. So just a few brief thoughts on what we're doing. I do want to say that coming from this morning's sessions that we had together with the Hachamim, when the Rabbi started speaking in the panel, Rabbi Abadi, Rabbi Ton, and Hacham Suisa, and Rabbi Yamin Levy, who was leading, I was very happy. I felt myself just feeling joy because all of them were saying things that I felt and thought and said myself. And so it does help to hear, that they're all saying something that we recognize as being so precious and so important. And then I was actually moved quite to be feeling very emotional that this is really something important. And clearly everybody here tonight recognizes that there's some importance in this. And this is what I'd like to share. We are social animals, human beings. We are social animals. And that means that we are highly influenced by those around us, whether we like it or not. There is really no way to shield from this, to the point that Rambam says that if it gets to a point where the people around are to a degree of negativity that is really can't mitigate, you need to go to the desert and live alone, right? Don't do that. But he says that ultimately we can't shield from social influence. Why do I say that? Because I do think that to a certain degree, the Sephardi heritage that we are all coming together to uphold and to strengthen and to speak to each other and remind each other and strengthen each other with has experienced a certain level of self-consciousness historically. And what I mean by that is that for a very long time, we all lived in our little silos. A very long time. Maybe 1,000 years. We lived in our cities, and everybody introduces themselves as what city you came from, what country you came from, which are all Galut. We know that. I'm a Halabi, right? I come from Halab. I don't come from Halab. My family comes from Halab, both sides, as far back as you can go. There's something about the city. And yet, we talk about it, we introduce ourselves that way, we talk about our minhagim that way, everything, our halakha. The city, where? In Syria. And we forget that sometimes. And you know that the Halabiyah did not talk to the Shamis, to the mass guy, not just they talked to them, they talked to them if they had to, but when they came together in New York, it was a big problem. It was to the point that even the children rarely were allowed to play with each other. I'm not exaggerating. Maybe not en masse, but it happened. Marriage, that was much more severe. We're not even talking Ashkenazim. We're talking Halabi and Sham. Okay? Right? I see Mexico, amazing communities there. They're very separate. Right? Why do I say this? Because we lived in our own silos, and we did not have to interact with each other. And whenever it is that we saw someone who was from another city, forget about another country, another city, there was already a sense of threat. Unless you had a common enemy like the Ashkenazim, and then you gathered together, and you fought against. Everybody understands, I say that in jest. Mostly. But in any case, right, but what's the point? The point is that there's a meta level of all of this that's important for us to recognize, and that is kibbutz galuyot. Kibbutz galuyot, the bringing in of exiles. And suddenly, in the United States of America, and in Eretz Israel like no other place, the Jews that lived by themselves in their own silos for 1,000 years suddenly had to learn to live together. And we're still figuring it out. It's not easy. However, what happened to the Sephardim was that we felt a bit self-conscious when we faced the Ashkenazim. And I believe I have a theory as to why that is. And it's a broad theory. You can argue with me. It's perfectly fine. I'm not married to the theory. But my theory was that we were finding ourselves moving into a Western world, post-Enlightenment, that had, for all intents and purposes, really not affected us in the same way that it affected them. And we found ourselves a bit unstable. And so to deal with that self-consciousness, we released and relinquished, and if we didn't, our children didn't, and if the children and the grandchildren started to relinquish our identity, what we held as our way for over 1,000 years and more. I mean, if you're going back to the way that we teach Mikra, for example, 2,000 years and more, we started to relinquish it because we started to feel a bit uncomfortable and maybe self-conscious about it. And we started to speak differently, dress differently, learn differently, and so on and so forth. Until little by little it started to become forgotten, and the volume was turned way down on that tradition. And if you're here tonight, I believe, I hope, it's because you recognize that that tradition is not something to be self-conscious about. To the contrary, it's something to be proud and strong in. Now, that being said, I do believe very strongly that that tradition does not just belong to the Sephardim. That tradition belongs to Kilal Israel. And in the spirit of Kibbutz Galuyot, it is our responsibility, those of us who grew up, who were bequeathed, were given that tradition. That's what Mesorah means. Mesorah means Masur. You were given it. It was handed over to you. Those who had it handed over, it is our responsibility not just to strengthen it from within, but let it start there, which is what we're doing in this conference, but to bring it to Klal Yisrael. That's why we have it in the first place. That ultimately is what Galut does. The entire point of Galut is you go out and learn. Because it wasn't working at home. You need to go out and learn. Seh ulmad. And what you pick up, you bring back into Klal Yisrael. And that's what we're struggling with now. Genuinely. We are working out as a people how to become a nation again and not a congregation. And that's what we're watching. And the difficulties are high. But what ultimately our vision is and what our goal must be is first to re-accept, to re-engage with, to own again our own Mesorah. And bring that Mesorah to Klal Yisrael. Because it belongs to all of us. And I can't tell you, as Avi was saying, it is my great honor to serve as the Rosh Midrash of the Habura. And again, another thing that would have been wonderful in vision, if it were not for Sina and for Avi, it would have remained in vision. They made it happen in practicality. All I do is the vision stuff. I don't do the practical stuff. And ultimately, I cannot tell you, in all of my travels, and I've been traveling, how many non-typical Masur Sephardim, meaning that they received the Mesorah Sephardim, come to me and say how inspired they are by our learning, by our Hachamim, by our Derech, how it helped them to come close to Kadosh Baruch Hu, to Limud Torah, to Shemirat HaMitzvot, to pride in their Judaism, to giving them an ability to be able to engage with the world, which is a hallmark of our Mesorah. A hallmark of our Mesorah is that we recognize that the world itself is an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not a distraction of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to test us whether we will be able to avoid it appropriately or not. But rather to find our love for Him in studying it and understanding it. Another hallmark of our Mesorah is what I will call the middle path. What do I mean by that? I don't just mean the derech beruni that Rabbi talks about in the Chod, which is an Aristotelian, which is important. That's not what I mean by that. Middle path means that you do not live in the extremes in the sense of thought. Because when you think about the extremes in terms of political extremes, religious extremes, social extremes, what have you, there is one thing that you know about extremes, and that is that you can predict how they will respond with any given circumstance. Is that not true? Do you not know what the left will say? Whatever comes out in the news tomorrow? Do you not know what the right will say? Whatever comes out in the news tomorrow? Of course you do. What you're not sure about is the center. And that's why nobody listens to them. Or it's very difficult to be able to latch on to them. Because where do you put them? And one of the things about being in the center is you must think. Because you don't know, if you are in the center, how you're going to respond to whatever it is that comes up in your life or in the world. Because you have to think about it. Consider it genuinely. And form a decision. It's not easy, but it is the way that it is that we are meant to be. It is what's expected. It's what Torah demands of us. That we think and consider things carefully and righteously. And for that, we have the mitzvah of learning and teaching. That's how we're supposed to engage in the world. The center must hold. And that is another thing that we must strengthen ourselves with in this gathering. Because it is a hallmark of our teaching. The center must hold. Because if it does not, the world will continue to gravitate toward extremes, and we will find our feet taken out from under us. And finally, I want to echo something and close with something that Rav Amrusi Sheikh said in his message to us earlier today. I think if you kind of blinked, you missed it, but he said something very powerful. He said, our Mesorah is based on a Torah and a dedication to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in love. Now that is not to mean that reverence and fear is not included in it. As Harambam writes at the opening of the 10th perek of Hilchot Teshuvah, Yir'ah is where we begin. Fear is where we begin. Why? Because we have to know that things matter. And because things matter, you fear not getting them right. That's appropriate. And what one knows in love, if you are genuinely loving and you care about your loving relationships, you know that in love, the stakes become higher, not lower. And if the stakes become higher, there is automatically a fear, reverence oriented in it. You don't want to get it wrong. But there is love. And love is the source. Love is the center. And that is the final hallmark of our Mesorah. That we believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. You pay attention now, we're reading Sefer Devarim, how much Moshe Rabbeinu says to Am Yisrael that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves you. Go into the land knowing that He loves you. Ki ahevecha Adonai Elohecha. Ki mehavat Adonai etchem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves you. Never forget that. And then we must love Him. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. We say it twice a day, every day. That is the center and foundation of our dedication, of our learning, of everything that we do. And it looks different when your base is love and not fear. When your encouragement of people is through love and not encouraging through fear. And that must be brought back to the fore in Klal Yisrael. And so Yehi Ratzon that this gathering should be blessed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu in love, and that it should be strong to strengthen all of us, and that we should be strong to bring it, as is our responsibility, to Klal Yisrael.
you, Rabbi Dweck.